everybody, happy Wednesday. It is Wednesday during summer, which means we are keeping up with our Susan's Sunday Spotlight. And today I wanted to talk all about some of my favorite activities for spiraling our math skills throughout the year. Now, before I dive into this, I want to mention this is going to be very similar to a video that I actually made for the Educator Summit about 1.5 years, 2 years ago. The Educator Summit is just an online conference that I love. They have a session in winter and a session in summer. When I can, I try to make a presentation. I like to do a session for it. And I will be doing that again coming up for winter of 2025, so be on the lookout for that. Right now, their summer session is still going right now. While I did not make my own presentation, there are tons of great sessions. This is what it looks like right here, and if you use the code SUSAN, you can still have access to all of the sessions through the end of August. So if you're looking for a little extra summer PD, they do offer PD certificates that you can check with your district to see if you get credits for, but I'll go ahead and link all of that down below in the description in case you want to check it out. And like I said, if you use the code SUSAN, you get a little discount. So check that out. If you have any questions, let me know, but that's going to be the basis of today's video. I've spent a lot of time talking about phonics, about writing, and I really just kind of wanted to do a little math video and share some of my favorite things that I like to do as I think about this new year coming up to help students remember all those different math skills. So if you're ready for this video, let's give it a thumbs up. Make sure you are subscribed to my channel, and let's get started. All right, quick little side note before I jump into this presentation. Because it is summertime, I am enjoying so many summer shows and summer books, and a couple that I wanted to share with you. I do watch Love Island, and that just ended, so I don't know what I'm gonna do every night at 9 o'clock. I very much miss that. But a book that I am currently reading right now is this one right here. It's One Golden Summer by Carly Fortune. Now, I loved her very first book. I can't remember the name of it right now, but I'll put a picture right here. Her very first book, I was blown away. The perfect little rom-com, perfect for summertime. I was giggling through it. And then her second book, I was like, it was okay. I think the second one was Meet Me at the Lake or something. I think I had such high expectations that the second one didn't exactly meet that for me. But this one, I am a little over a third of the way through and I'm just giggling like a little schoolgirl. It's so fun, it's so flirty, it is perfect for summer. So if you're looking for a fun summer read, pick that one up. Also, books I'm so excited to read, Atmosphere by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I cannot wait. I did just finish The Tenant by Frida McFadden. That looks like this. I enjoy Frida McFadden books. If you've read a bunch of them, you can kind of start to guess the formula, which isn't that fun. So I really try to space them out. And then I really try to like not think about it and just enjoy the ride for what it is. And I thought it was fine. It's like a 3.75 out of 5. So not excellent, but not horrible. It was a fun, fast read. All that to say, if you have any summer books that you highly recommend, please drop them down below. I still have about 1.5 months of summer and I'd like to read as much fun as I can before I have to head back to school. So drop down your recommendations in the comments. All right, let's dive in. Before I share some of the quick math routines I like to incorporate in my classroom, I just want to really quickly go over 3 best math practices for teaching students in grades K through 2. Now, I've talked about these many, many times if you've watched my videos, but they're usually kind of sporadically mentioned throughout the video. So I wanted to just focus it in on the beginning of this right here. The 3 best math practices I'm going to talk about today for kindergarten, 1st, and 2nd grade students is going to be number 1, the CRA method, which I have an entire video about and you've heard me talk about many times. Teaching conceptual versus procedural, and then also keeping things multi-sensory. Just to dive in a little bit for each one, here we have CRA in action, and CRA stands for concrete, representational, and abstract. And basically what that means is we want students to work through this CRA method. We want them to be able to understand a concept with concrete materials, things like using blocks. So here's an example for place value, for example, understanding teen numbers. So with the concrete, what we want students to understand is that the number 13 is a base 10 block and 3 more. We want them to see that we can unitize this 10 and that a 10 and 3 more equals 13. Once students understand that concept with the concrete, we move them right to the representational. And representational is to see if they can actually draw what this means. So instead of using something like cubes, I want to see if they can use paper and pencil or whiteboard and marker and actually show me what that number 13 looks like by drawing a 10 and 3 ones. And then the abstract, of course, is just going to be the numbers. Do students understand that the number 13, 1, 3, those digits, that actually means 10 plus 3? Now, I do always like to point out that while CRA seems linear, it seems like we move from the concrete to the representational, to the abstract, and that's part of it, especially for intervention purposes. If students are not understanding that abstract, we want to bring them back to the representational. If they're not understanding that representational, we want to bring them back to the concrete and spend more time in each of those areas before we move them forward. But it is important to note that CRA is not linear, right? We want it to be more circular, and this is what I mean by that. We don't want to teach each of those parts in isolation. What I mean by that is when we are showing students the number 13 with cubes, we're also writing the number 13. We can have it there. It's not like I shouldn't show them that the number 13, or it's not like I shouldn't show them what that looks like while I'm also using cubes or pictures. We do want to use them all together because it builds stronger representations within each connection. So the CRA method is really just to make sure that we're doing all three when we're teaching a new skill, and also helps with that intervention of if students aren't getting it, where we might need to move back and move forward. But it should be more fluid and not just, you know, this step, then this step, then this step. Next, when we're talking about conceptual versus procedural, I've again talked about this many, many times, especially in later videos where I dive into different skills in math that you might be teaching in K-2, but it is really important that we are not just teaching students a procedure when they are learning a new math skill, but we're teaching them the concept. The conceptual understanding is what we want them to have. And for this, I always use an example of greater than or less than, more than or less than. And what I want students to be able to see here is that greater than or more than and less than can be understood many, many different ways. I want students to be able to see this pitcher in this glass, and we talk about which one can hold more, which one can hold less. I want students to be able to see different items, right? I want them to see these 5 cubes and these 3 cubes. I want them to be able to figure out which one is more, which one is less. I want them to be able to prove it and understand what that really means. Now, this is in contrast to a number line, for example. And what I mean by this is I could easily teach students how to find which number is more than or less than by using a number line. I might say, hey, if the number is closer to this 8 over here, it's going to be more than a number that's closer to the 1. And vice versa. If a number is closer to the 1, then it is less than a number closer to the 8. What I'm teaching students there is actually a procedure, and while that procedure works, I want them to understand what more than and less than means before I teach that procedure. Now, similar to what I said about CRA, it's not like you're just teaching one over the other. Students definitely need to learn a procedure while they understand the concept, but you want to make sure that they have a conceptual understanding first, in my opinion, then before you just dive into the procedure, because then sometimes they don't even know why they're doing what they're doing, and they can make, you know, simple mistakes if they just understood it a little bit more. So just be careful you're not diving into teaching students a procedure before they understand the skill. And the last one is something I feel like K-2 teachers are so good at, and that is keeping math multisensory. Now, I've talked about this more, I feel like, in my phonics videos, because I find it so easy for teachers to make math multisensory, because we're used to using cubes and manipulatives and all these fun things to show their learning, and sometimes we forget to do that in phonics, which we still need to. But in math, there are so many ways to do this, and it's just important to remember that multisensory doesn't just mean cubes, right? It means a lot of different things. It means we definitely use cubes and base 10 blocks and Rec and Recs and all sorts of different hands-on materials to show these skills, but we also want students up and moving. We want them using popsicle sticks. We want them talking about their learning. We want them using multi-senses, more than one sense when they are learning. So I just wanted to give a quick little reminder of these 3 important practices before we dive into some of my favorite math routines for spiraling review. All right, the first quick math routine I want to bring up is probably gonna come as no surprise to many of you, but that is to incorporate a daily math talk. Now, if you've been following my videos, you know that I love a good math talk or a number talk, however you wanna call it, a math warm-up to warm up our brains before we dive into our math block. And not only do I use them to review the skills that we're currently going over, but I also use them to review and spiral previous skills. It is the perfect time to do that and just to get our minds ready to talk about math and learn about math. Now, I have a ton of math talk videos. I'm pretty sure if you type in Susan Jones Teaching Math Talks, you will get a bunch of videos where I share my favorite ones, different things I like to do, all sorts of ones. So I'm just gonna keep this a little bit brief, but just go over some of my favorite aspects of a math talk and just some things to keep in mind. First, you wanna keep this to about 5 to 8 minutes at most. I know there are plenty of other sources that will tell you to talk about one problem for about 10 to 15 minutes, and that is definitely a deep dive into a math talk, and those have their time and place. I personally like to, especially for first grade, I like to keep my math talk time to about 5 minutes. And we kind of go through about 1 to 3 slides per math talk. And when we are doing a math talk or a number talk, it is almost always a review skill. Again, this is how I like to spiral my learning. It could be from a lesson we just learned the day before, but it could also be from lessons we learned months ago. It's a great way for students to just dive deeper into these skills and review them. Also, when I am doing a math talk, if I'm using, 2 or 3 slides, I do like to keep them all the same skill. It just kind of represented in different ways. Here's an example for more and less than that I would use towards the end of the year because we're comparing numbers within 100 or up to 120. So here's a progression that I would definitely use in my classroom that I've used many times before. First, I would have this picture all the way over here and it says, let's compare. I show 3 different numbers and I have the words more and less at the bottom. And it says, use the words more and less to compare these numbers. So I am looking for students to be able to identify how many is in each of these little boxes here where they have base 10 cubes to count up. And then I'm looking for them to compare them using the words more and less. After getting quite a few examples from students, I would go into the next slide. Here you can see that I have the abstract, right? So I went from representational to more abstract, and I just have the numbers. You can see that they all have the number 7 in them. We have 17 and 71. So again, I'm kind of testing their place value knowledge. Look at these numbers and compare them using more and less. Again, I'll get a few more examples, and then I will go to a complete it. Complete it here, this is a much more open-ended one. So we have 34 is less than blank. And now I would not say that out loud to students. I would make them, I would see if they could understand what that symbol means and come up with different answers that could belong in the missing blanks. And just to try to hear what they have to say, right? So I like to keep them about 5 minutes and they kind of work through a progression like that. Now, another important thing to remember when you are having a math talk is you are the facilitator. Some simple operation math talks are always a great way to warm up our brains. So here we have 7 plus 6 plus 5. And all I'm doing is asking students to solve this, and I'm asking them to share how they got it. So I actually care much less about if they got the answer correct and much more about how they can explain their thinking to me. In fact, one of the things I often tell other teachers to do is they should not confirm or deny a student's answer. If a student solves this problem and they say the wrong answer, you say, can you tell me more? Tell me how you solved it. And you work through it with them until they figure out that they got it wrong and they can then fix it. So not only do I not confirm, because again, I want students to prove their answer to me, I also like to say, can you show me another way? So here the student solved it by decomposing the 6 into a 1 and 5 and making a quick tens fact with a double, 5 and 5. So they got 18. Once students solve this and I write it down, this is like an actual example of how I would draw this on the board. Then I go ahead and erase it and I ask, who can show me another way to solve this? How could you solve this in a different way? And another of my favorite phrases that I've shared many times before is I love to ask students, how did Hannah solve this problem? So let's pretend Hannah just solved it the way I showed on the board. I ask then the class, who can explain to me what Hannah did? This is a great way for those students that might not know the answer right away or might not have another way to share it, but they can still be involved. And by sharing somebody else's procedure, students are also learning how they can solve it, right? Not only are they showing active listening skills, and because students know that I ask that question a lot, they're really trying to listen in for each person that's solving it, so they can go ahead and explain it again. So again, you want to be the facilitator. You don't want to confirm or deny an answer. You're looking for multiple different answers when possible. And then you're also looking for students to repeat back in their own words how somebody else solved the problem. I have so many different math talks that I created for the year with tons of different skills. This is what the bundle looks like for the whole year. Each little skill has about 24 different slides, different math talks for each skill, and then they also have editable ones at the end. So if students need extra practice with that skill, you can kind of plop that in. So I typically like to add them into the unit that I'm actually teaching. But sometimes, like I said, I'll spiral it too. So I will take those skills and I will plop them into other units, especially with skills like telling time and money. Those skills that we really kind of only spend a couple weeks on, I like to plop those in throughout the year to make sure we are spiraling them. But what I love the most is that math talks require students to be flexible with not only numbers, but also with their thinking. When I create a lot of my math talks, I really try to have students decomposing numbers. I try to have them moving numbers, thinking about them in different ways and seeing how they work, because I feel like that really builds their number sense as they are going to get to trickier and trickier math problems as they grow up. So my number one way to spiral review skills throughout the year is by using a daily math talk. All right, math routine number 2 that I love is counting routines. Now, counting is so important in grades K through 2 because counting is really going to help students develop their number sense. They're going to help them understand unitizing. It's going to just give them that practice that they need. And when I'm talking about counting review, I am talking about it in a few different ways. I want students to be able to orally count. I want them to be able to skip count. I want them to be able to count forwards, count backwards, starting from any number. But also I want students to be able to physically count things, whether it is with manipulatives or it is with pictures, however they can. So we are counting. We are counting when we are keeping score during a game, right? We are seeing who's winning, who's losing, how many more points do we need in order to catch up, how much time is left. We're counting so many things. We're counting money, we're counting sets of objects, we're counting things that are in front of us on a daily basis, and we're comparing them. Do I have enough forks to feed everybody here at dinner? We're also counting time. That's a real life applicable thing that happens all the time. So counting is very important for our students as they just continue to grow older. Now in K through 2, I love using a quick little circle counting warm up. So if I'm doing a circle count, I will sometimes do this instead of my math warm up. This is just another way to warm up our brains. So here are some examples of my favorite circle counting ideas. First of all, I like to see how high can we go. I might go ahead and put a timer on the board for 1 minute and we just start anywhere in the circle and we are just counting as quickly as we can, going around one by one and seeing how high we can go. We can do that same thing, but instead of counting by ones, we can count by twos, by fives, tens, hundreds. It's also important to make sure that you are starting from any number. Don't always start at the number 1. And we also want to make sure our students can count forwards and backwards. I always like to throw in a let's count back from 24, go, and see how long it takes to get us around the circle. My favorite counting game that I've shared many times ago is Buzz. This is a video from like 2018, but my kids still love the game Buzz. It is so simple. All students do is stand up and you go around the circle as they are counting. And the whole point of the game Buzz is that you cannot say any number that is a multiple of 10. So as students count, they say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then whoever is going to be 10 has to say Buzz. And if they say Buzz, then the person next to them, the person that would have been 11, sits down. And then they continue to go around the circle. And as you grow this throughout the year, students know that if they forget to say Buzz, they sit. If they don't know the next number, they sit. And they sit if they're the person after the one that says Buzz. So it'll go pretty quickly at the beginning of the year. It can take a little bit of stamina to build up. At the beginning of the year, I often put up a 120 chart so students can refer to that. We talk about where the buzzes are, all the multiples of 10, and then we take that away. So you can play Buzz many different ways, and as your students get better at it, you can say, okay, no multiples of 5 or multiples of 10. You can make it even trickier for them. But my kids love to play Buzz, and usually by the end of the game Buzz, whoever's the last one standing can get like a quick little sticker or something, just to add a little fun to it. But we love Buzz. Now I also love to do partner counting. Sometimes I will just have students pair up with a partner super quick, go off and find a quiet spot, and we will just whisper count. We can do a lot of the same practice that we did in circle counting, but with a partner. So again, I'll throw a timer up on the board and I say, see how high you can count before this timer's up. And then when they're done, they all raise their hand, they say how high they counted. And as they go around, I'm like, you have to keep it nice and quiet so we don't hear everybody counting. We don't get confused. And I walk around and I just listen to them. They're like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so on. And again, with that, you can start from any number. You can count forwards, you can count backwards, you can count by 2s, by 5s, by 10s. And here is another game that I love. I've shared this warm up before that I learned from our math coach, and it is just called Cover Up. This is a great fun skip counting game, and all you need is this little paper right here and just some index cards that are cut in half. And I actually have this template as a freebie for you. Here we do it with skip counting by 2s, but you can do it with 1s, you can do it with 10s, you can do it with 5s, whatever you would like. You can do it with the 100s. So here we have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20. And all students do is they are gonna go back and forth counting those numbers. Pretend there are none of these blue index cards on here. Pretend the board is completely blank. You would just read it the way I did. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20. Then my partner would take one of those blue index cards and they would cover up one of the numbers. You can either have students look or you can have them turn away. After I go ahead and read it blank, I have my partner close their eyes and I take one of those blue index cards and I cover up a number. Now it's their turn to read it. So now they have to count by 2s and count and try to remember which one is covered up. So let's pretend I covered up the 10. 2, 4, 6, 8. Ooh, it's not there for them to see, but they have to remember 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20. Then that player takes an index card, they cover up another one. While I'm not looking, I have to go ahead, now I have to remember it. So not only are we skip counting by 2s over and over and over again, but we're practicing remembering it without needing to look. So again, it's just a fun little practice game to get students counting. All of these counting games are really helping students fluency, and the faster students can count forwards and backwards, it's really going to help them with their operations as they continue to grow in those math skills, right? And last but not least, I know I mentioned we're doing a lot of oral counting here, but I also like to kick off any number sense unit with some simple tactile counting. At my school, we use Math in Focus, so we typically teach students numbers within 10 at the very beginning of the year, just to review. Then we really quickly dive into numbers within 20. Then we dive into numbers within 40. Then we dive into numbers up to 100. And we kind of break it up along the way because we always do a number sense unit where if we're learning about numbers within 20, we are talking about comparing them. We're talking about counting them. We're diving deep, and then we do immediately after that operations, so addition and subtraction within 20. Then we learn a couple other things, and then we do number sense within 40, counting, unitizing, understanding that place value, and then comparing those numbers. And then we go into operations within 40, learn a couple other skills, and then same thing, we go right back into that number sense unit within 100, and then operations within 100, and so on. So I really like the way that is set up because it lets us kind of dive deep into those numbers before we do operations with them. And when we are doing those units, I almost always have us do mystery bags. It is such a simple way for students to practice counting. And again, it's tactile, it's using that concrete. And all students are going to do is I fill up a bunch of brown paper bags, a bunch of mystery bags with cubes. Now, when I'm doing the numbers 20 to 40, 10, 20, and 40, I typically do Unifix cubes. So that way they can actually feel them, they can put them in groups, they can count them, and then they count different bags. They have to compare which bag has more, which bag has less. As students go up to 100 and 120, sometimes I am adding some base 10 cubes in there, so they might have rods and they might have units. They can count how many is in each, right? As the numbers get bigger, I'm looking for students to group those units into groups of 10 and 1. So just unitizing and practicing. So not only are we doing a bunch of oral counting, but we're also always practicing counting with manipulatives. All right, and last but not least, math routine number 3 I love for spiraling skills is going to be playing math games. Now, I love playing math games, and if you watch any of my math videos when I'm in the classroom, you will see that I'm always incorporating some sort of partner game, group game, some game for students to practice the skill that I have been teaching. Now, not only do I practice the skill that we're teaching, but also sometimes we are reviewing older skills that I've previously taught. I have so many math games that I have used, and just a couple little tips when you are using partner games is you really want to pair students effectively based on skill. So when I am doing a partner game, I will usually have my lowest students back with me at the back table, and I am playing this game with them. My higher students, they are playing it off on their own. Same with my on grade level students. I will typically pair a grade level student with a higher student, just in case they need a little bit of help, but I try not to pair any like huge discrepancies together, just because I don't find that that works. Here's just a few of my favorite games. We have 10 more, 10 less cover up. I absolutely love this game. This game, the students just spin a number. We do this starting within 50 and then we go up to 120. So they'll spin a number, and then they have to cover up on the board, not the number that they spun, but either a number 10 more or 10 less. So if they landed on 27, they could cover up 17, or they could cover up 37. So they're practicing a few different skills there. In the middle, we have Race to 50, which is one of our all-time favorite games, where students are learning about place value, and they just roll a dice going back and forth, trying to be the first to get to 50. But every time they get 10, they're either, like in this picture, exchanging 10 ones for a rod, or if they're using Unifix cubes, they have to stack it up and kind of lay it down horizontally. And then over on the right-hand side, we have Make Me 10. This is a game I use at the beginning of the year, and students have to spin a number up at the top. So let's say they land on 5. Then the student in their grid has to color in the number that would make 10. So if they landed on 5, they're coloring in another 5. If they land on 7, they're coloring in a 3, and so on. Also, some tips is you definitely want to offer some concrete materials as needed. I always have Unifix cubes, base 10 blocks, anything concrete that we've used before available for students to use. And then I also like to offer a whiteboard and marker as needed. A lot of the games might seem pretty abstract, so when you offer up those tools, when I'm teaching students how to do this game, whole group first, I'm using those tools and I'm showing them how I would do that. So let's say for the 10 more, 10 less cover up game, if I spin the number 27, I think I said, I will say, oh, I got 27. This is what that looks like. And I'll use 2 base 10 cubes, or I'll use 2 rods and 7 ones, 27. Okay, if I want to find a number that's 10 less, I would take one of these away. What do I have? 17. But if I want to do 10 more, and then I take another one and I add it, 37. So I'm showing them how to do that first. If they don't need it, they don't have to use it. But this way I've at least explained it to them. I have it available for them. They can use that concrete, or I can show them how to draw it as well. When you are doing that CRA method, you do want to make sure you're modeling all 3 of the ways to kind of solve it, so your students can see that too, just FYI. Now, like I said, I have created so many math games that I use in all of my units, but some favorites for my classroom are games that really require little to no prep. So I like something that I can throw into one of these plastic sleeves, or we're just coloring on it. I'm just printing it out. They're using 2 different color crayons and they take it home at the end. I like games that only require things I already have in class, like cubes or dice. I like games that have very minimal directions. Oftentimes I like games where the title of it, like roll and build, is exactly the direction. You are rolling and you are building. And of course I like games that are fun. What I love most about games in the classroom are not only can I choose ones that are going to be effective and I can pinpoint exactly what students need extra help on, but they're highly engaging. So it is a great way for students to practice winning, practice losing, and practice different math skills while they're having fun with a friend. So partner games we use all the time, but there's also a few whole group games that I love for spiraling skills too. Here are just a couple of my favorites. For whole class games, I love Mix and Match. Now, all of these games you can use with some simple index cards, but also in the SJT Math Club, I have tons of Mix and Match and Quiz Trade cards already ready to go for pretty much every skill you're going to teach. So Mix and Match would be like the pink cards up at the top. Basically, you are going to have 2 different cards that need to be matched together. So if we're doing time, we have 2 o'clock in the digital form and 2 o'clock in the analog form. And then a bunch of other times that could be matched up. And all students would have to do is everybody would get a card, they spread out around the classroom, and then when I say go, they have to mix around and find their partner. Once they find their partner, I always have them high five and they go and sit down on the rug. That way, as partners get matched up, they can see kind of who's left and who needs a partner to mix and match with. And I know I shared that one with time, but you can do that with pretty much anything, addition problems, subtraction problems, and have them find their answer. The next one I love is going to be the blue cards. It is Quiz, Quiz, Trade. I use this game all the time and my students love it. What you're going to do here is you're just going to throw any type of problem on an index card. And students do not need to have a match here. Here they are actually just quizzing their partner with some simple skills. So here we have 7 plus 6 and 2 plus 9. Everybody would have a card with their own kind of problem on it. And students would go up to the person and I would say, okay, what is 7 plus 6? The student would have to solve it. Now you can see here in the slide that there's a little circle in the corner of it. That is because the answer to that 13 would be on the back, and that allows the person to check their partner. So 7 plus 6, if the partner says 13, then you say, oh, yep, good job. And then they quiz me, right? What's 2 plus 9? 9, 2 more, 11. And then we say it's correct. So we quiz each other and then we trade cards. So now I have the 2 plus 9 card, they have the 7 plus 6 card. They turn around and they go find a new partner around the room. So you want a different card for every student in the class. So they are just quizzing and quizzing and quizzing. And again, you can do it with addition, subtraction. You could have different analog times up there. You can do it with any skill that you're teaching. Last but not least is something like 4 corners or pick a side. And that can be like the green one down at the bottom. 19 minus 5 is 14. 16 minus 10 is going to be 6. And you can just have 4 different answers around the corners of your room, and students have to solve their problem and figure out the correct answer and go to that corner. You could also do pick a side where you might have like the answer is less than 10 or the answer is more than 10. That would work for this example, and then 19 minus 5 would go over to the more than 10 side, 16 minus 10 would go to the less than 10 side. And my only rule for that is when students go to their corners or go to their side, everybody at that corner or side has to check everybody new that comes. So you're like always, you're not just like, okay, I solved mine and I'm gonna go here and be quiet. You have to make sure that everybody in your group has the correct answer and belongs there. And if they don't, you're gonna help them and guide them to where they need to go. All right, so those are some of my favorite math routines for helping students spiral review skills all year long. First, we have a daily math talk, which I absolutely love. Second, we have to incorporate some counting routines. And third, we have math games. Now, the last question I just want to answer is when can I fit this in? I know that sometimes teachers have a hard time figuring out when they can throw in those games. When can they add a math talk to their already tight math block? So I just wanted to share this slide right here. It says, how do we fit it all in? And these are the 3 times where I am always fitting in these different routines, right? So first is going to be the beginning of math. I shared this earlier and it says this is the first 5 to 8 minutes of your math block, and that's the perfect time to really do one of those counting routines or one of those math talks. It's a perfect way to review and build knowledge before you kind of dive into a new concept. Now, also during the math block, the games happen during that we do portion. So my math block always starts off with a math talk, and then we go into some explicit learning where I am teaching a skill, and I'm just doing the explicit teaching, the explicit modeling, and then we kind of go into the we do. So this is when I will usually teach a game. I'll have everybody sit in a circle, and we're going to practice the skill that I just taught them, right? So we're gonna practice it in a circle. We'll do a couple repetitions. I will ask for student input and kind of gauge how they're doing. And then I'll partner students off and they can go play for about 5 to 10 minutes before we bring it on back. And now, like I said earlier, especially for math games, I am pulling my lowest students and I'm playing it with them. I will definitely go through a few repetitions and then I'll kind of stand up from the table and say, okay, you're gonna do a few on your own, and I'll walk around and check on the other students just to see how they're doing. But then I come right back, but you're really kind of playing that with them, and you always wanna offer up lots of concrete materials for them to use. Other times we do this is during our win block. I have a win block, I have a whole video on it. It looks like this right here. But during our win block is when I incorporate math games every single day for students to spiral and review those skills. And those are usually going to be skills that we've previously learned. And then last but not least, I always love to do a spiral station day. So once every 7-ish days, so pretty much like every other week, I like to hold spiral stations so I can get eyes on everyone with a new skill while they review older skills. And just to show you real quick what that might look like, here is an example right here. There might be 3 or 4 stations. It'll depend on how many kids there are, how long your block is, and so on. But basically one of the stations for that whole day is going to be meeting with me. So the students in this group are going to meet with me, and we're going to go over the exact skill that we are learning in real time. So if I am teaching, you know, place value within 40, that is what I'm going over with the students. It allows me to get eyes on everybody and make sure that they understand what I am teaching, while another group might be at an iPad station doing something like IXL. And then this dice group is usually always a math game that they're playing. And this will always be a math game that they have previously been taught, because I'm not teaching anything new today. I might quickly go over how to play the game again, but they are reviewing an older skill. And then the 4th station, if we have one, is going to be a paper and pencil type of activity. So just like an independent worksheet, an independent practice sheet that they are doing, again, to review an older skill. And then all I do is put a little timer. Maybe we're doing 8 minutes per station. And then I will see every single student during that day. That's my station's day. They come, they see me, I get eyes on everybody, and then students are reviewing those skills. So that's a great time to kind of add in those games. Phew, all right, that was a longer video, but I really wanted to just dive into some of my favorite routines that I use every single year that I'm excited to use again this year coming up, and just give you some ideas for helping you spiral those skills throughout the year. If you have other routines that you love or other games and activities, let me know down in the comments below so I can check them out. If you do happen to be in my SJT Math Club, every single game and activity and math warm-up, pretty much every single thing I shared in this video is available in the SJT Math Club. And the Math Club, along with my other 2 clubs, the Literacy Club and the Writing Club, actually open up tomorrow for a brand new year. So if that is something you're interested in, make sure you go ahead and check out the link in my description for that below. Also, they're going to be 20% off for the first 2 days. So if you are looking for some fun for the upcoming year, if you're looking to be all prepped and ready to go, make sure you check those out. As always, if you enjoyed this video, please go ahead and give it a thumbs up so I know. Make sure you are subscribed to my channel and click that bell. That way you're notified of every new video. Any questions or comments, let me know down below, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.